Hello again, guys. So this is going to be the second part of your group project. It's the paper. So we talked about last time doing your proposal. So you've submitted your proposal and I will get back to you about your company and if it is approved or if you need to change it. And now we're going to talk about your paper for your social media audit. So for this class, your group will be required to write a 3 to 5 page paper auditing an existing company's social media presence. The company you are auditing is thinking about hiring your team as their social media consultant. Write the paper as if you were talking to the brand itself. You will need to cite references for the recommendations you make. The paper will be written using AP style, and your references should follow APA style. So that's the references within your paper as well as the reference page. I often get the question, if we're writing the paper as if we're talking to the brand itself, do we have to write in the third person? You do not. You can write in the first or second or third person. However, it has to be consistent. Do not bounce back and forth between different tenses. So your paper requirement is 3 to 5 pages, not including your reference page. We don't want to go beyond 5 pages because honestly, if you were submitting this to a client, even 5 pages is really long. 4 pages is probably pretty long. But because you guys are new to this and you'll be surprised how fast those pages fill up, you want to make sure you're clear and concise. And think about this as if you were pitching a client and maybe they don't know a ton about social media, so their attention span isn't going to be very, very long. We talked about using AP style for the body of your paper. Again, I'm not super strict on AP style. Use it as the basics. Have someone proofread it that knows AP style. You need to have a minimum of 8 sources. Again, this is also about you citing different sources and why you're making recommendations for changes in their social media. This gives you third-party credibility. It's not just you saying, oh, I think you should do this. This is saying, I think you should do this because the statistics in the latest article on HubSpot are showing that X amount of people are actually going to Instagram these days. You do not need a cover page, but you do need to make sure you include your agency's name and all group members' names on the front page. Also include your class, section, day, and time, and the name of the company you are auditing. Social media audit papers are due the day of your presentation, and each team member must submit it to Dropbox. So let's talk about your paper outline. So I said you don't need a cover page. You do need to stick your agency name and your team members' names on the top. And then I also want you right at the top to list the company website and give a link to it. List each of the social media channels the brand is on and include a link to each of those channels. And note if the channel is active or inactive. There's a very good chance you will find some inactive channels, and sometimes you may even find multiples. So sometimes companies have started a Facebook page and then forgot the password, or an intern started it and they didn't get the credentials to log in. So you want to note that you've done your research and you've really looked for all the different pages out there that could possibly be theirs. So you're going to start with an introduction. Again, you want to take your client on a journey through why social media is important to your recommendations and concluding giving the value that you can present to them. Again, this is about storytelling, so think of it in that way. So your introduction should be 2 to 3 paragraphs max. Tell why a focus on social media is important. Give a brief overview of social media and how it can be used for business. Tell how by improving their social media they can improve their business, and give a transition sentence to go into the next section so it doesn't sound like it just drops off. So essentially here what we're trying to do is set up why is it important to this business to have a good social media presence. At the end of the day, with most small businesses, they really just want to see an increase in sales, right? And we know that social media can be a driver of sales, and it can also be, even more importantly, as a PR person, a great way to create long-term relationships with your customers. So you want to make sure that you're telling them that ahead of the game and leading them into here's our recommendations and here's why you should think this is important. From your introduction, you're going to go into your branding. So again, this is a social media audit. The real meat of the paper is going to be in when you break down the social media channels, but you want to make sure that you give a couple paragraphs about branding. A lot of times with small businesses, their branding will be very disjointed, their logos won't be consistent, their handles across their social media channels won't be consistent, and we know that those are not best practices. So start out by talking a little bit about their brand. Who is their primary audience? What is their visual aesthetic and tone of voice? How could it be improved? So essentially, if you're doing a record store, then the primary audience is probably going to be men in their 30s and 40s, I'm guessing. And then you're going to have some of those like hipsters who are a little bit younger. When I say tone of voice, is their tone of voice casual? Is it funny and lighthearted? Is it very serious? Is it professional? Is their visual aesthetic consistent? I'm pretty sure you guys are very good with identifying visual aesthetic. I don't think I really need to explain that much to you guys, to the Instagram generation. And how can it be improved? Is their brand consistent across all channels? Are their handles the same? Are their profile pictures the same? Are their cover photos the same or similar? What about their about sections? Are they the same or similar? Bullet point out key recommendations to pull their branding in line and be consistent. The next section, like I talked about, is going to be the meat of your paper. This is the social media channel breakdown. So you're going to have a subsection for each social media channel that they are on or that you're recommending they be on. What are they doing well? How can they improve? So you never want to go into a pitch or an audit by just hammering them with all the things they're doing wrong. You're going to offend some of them. You're also going to put up a wall. And so you want to make sure you're talking about what they're doing well. Start out with here's what you're doing well, and you can improve it by doing this. Would you recommend they keep that specific channel or close that channel? Or is this a new channel you're recommending that they're not on, but you know that it would better match their audience? Did you find any fake or imposter channels? Sometimes this happens. Again, this is also where you can include if you found any inactive channels that are competing with their own page. Bullet point out recommendations for each channel. I gave you some paper examples, and I'll show you that in a minute. But essentially what this ends up looking like is like a header, Facebook, a little brief paragraph about what they're doing well, how they can improve, what recommendations that you have, and then a few bullets about key recommendations for that channel specifically. Next, we're going to move on to their website. This is not an audit on their website. We are simply looking at their website to see if they have any buttons to their social media channels on their website. Again, this is looking at their website not as a whole, but just as how it relates to social media. We know, again, that the website is the most important owned media for any company. So we want to make sure that we are linking the website and the social media. So do they have those buttons on their website? Are they easy to find? Do the links work? That's a big one. Do they open in a new window? So we talked about this before, but I want to reiterate. Anytime you have a link on your website, if you are linking to an outside page, such as a social media page, you want to make sure that opens up in a new window. You don't ever want to bounce that user off of your page and have them have to use the back key or the back arrow in order to get back to your website. So, do the links work? Do they open up in a new page? Are they on social media that isn't represented on their website? Do they have an Instagram or Twitter scroll, or do they have some other form of how they're showcasing their social media on their website? And then again, bullet point out key recommendations, if any, for the website as it relates to social media. Then you have all this great information, you have all these great recommendations. You want to wrap this up in a bow. So your conclusion is really where you want to drive your point home and show your value. So you're going to give a really brief summary of the audit, a recommendation of resources needed to improve their social media presence, i.e., do they need more staff? Do they need a professional photographer? Should they invest in a scheduling app, etc.? Give them encouraging words on how this can be done. Reassure them boost their confidence that this is possible and they can definitely do it with your team. Again, this is a pitch. You're trying to pitch to be their social media agency. And remind them again one last time about why improving their social media will benefit their business's bottom line. So now that your social media audit's over, you're going to have a couple reference pages. So you want to make sure to cite your references within your paper. And then you're going to include your reference list at the end. You need a minimum of 8 sources to support your recommendations. You may utilize the book in my lectures and references therein, but you need further sources outside of what has been offered in this class. You do need to do some of your own research. So if you have 8 sources and they're all from my lectures, you're not going to get full credit on this portion. You can also use competitors as references. So make sure you're looking at their competitors too to see what they're doing. And a few tips for your social media audit paper. So again, for this project, pretend that the company you're auditing is thinking about hiring you as their social media agency. Write the paper as if you were talking to the brand. Give recommendations, but be kind, positive, and smart about it. You don't want to anger or turn off your potential client. Be concise. Don't get too wordy. I guarantee you, you guys are like, oh, 3 to 5 pages, that's so long. You will have to cut this down. You will have so many recommendations. I don't have a font size or a spacing specific. Just make sure that it's legible, that it looks good. Please, God, do not use Times New Roman. That's my only stickler. Use a more modern font. But the margins, the font size, as long as it's legible and clear, you can toy around with that to make sure it sticks within this 3 to 5 pages. Don't focus too much on their website. This is about the social media channel specifically. And lastly, proofread. If you guys are doing this paper 2 days before it is due, you are not going to have enough time to proofread, and it is very obvious. And again, I deduct points for spelling errors, for grammar errors, and for AP style errors, and it will drop you a grade at least. So I have a lot of teams that have A papers but didn't proofread, and it's very obvious, and then their papers are not A papers anymore. Here's a few additional resources for you that you can check out on how to do a social media audit. Again, I'm giving you kind of the template for how to do it in this class, but this could help you organize and kind of direct how you're looking at these different channels. Here's the grading rubric. This is exactly what I use to check off your paper and how I grade it. It's 45 points total with the 5 points that you guys are earning for your proposal. That makes the 50 points on this part of the project. You'll see it's broken down by the channels, the paper structure, the branding, each of the specific social media channels and what your recommendations are, the website, and did you follow instructions. Your deductions are going to be AP style, grammar, and spelling. Minus 1 point for each error up to 5 points. And if you submit it late, you will lose 5 points as well. This is all on Beachboard 2, and I'll show you where it is. So you're going to submit your paper. You only need to create 1 paper for your whole group. But each team member must upload the group's paper to their personal Dropbox on Beachboard so that I can grade it accordingly. And here is where you will upload it. As I said, I have A papers up on Beachboard for you, and you can see that there's a whole section for the social media audit group project. If you click on papers, and then there's a subsection with A papers, there's a bunch of different social media audit papers there that were A's in the past. So this is under content on Beachboard. The due dates for your audit paper, they're due on the day of your presentations. So for section 1, that's May 4th and 6th, and for section 2, that's May 5th and 7th. And again, one last reminder, look at the section under content on Beachboard. That is the social media audit for the group project. It has a lot more information. I'm giving you the top line, but those A students will also look here and deep dive into this, so they have a really good idea of what an A paper looks like and what all the requirements are. So I will see you for the final third part of this group project, which will be the presentation, during our next class session.